Hi, beautiful. Today we are talking about calories on low fat raw vegan. Do they matter? Do they not matter? Do you somehow transcend the laws of physics when you are on low fat raw vegan diet? Do you defy thermodynamics? Can you eat infinitely many calories and still be a lean, mean fighting machine, even if you spend your life as a sedentary individual and you're 4 feet tall and a tiny little person? So, what's the deal? Okay. If you're like me, you've been in this world for a while, you've been in the YouTube world for a while, you've probably heard a lot of trash. I don't know if this is being propagated so much these days. I know back when I was getting started with raw foods about 5 years ago, the message that was being thrown out there again and again was eat more calories and eat as much as you want and eat and shovel in the dates, shovel in the bananas. Fruit doesn't make you fat, carbs don't make you fat, yada yada yada. You don't have to work out very hard to be super lean and fit. And it was very, very confusing to me because I was coming from a background, like many of us, of calorie restriction equals weight loss, calorie restriction equals ideal weight maintenance, and really just work out as much as you can to stay toned and lean and fit and healthy, and to kind of counterbalance the food and the calories that you're taking in. So, to a certain extent, some of that's valid, right? You can eat a much greater volume of food on a low-fat, raw vegan lifestyle, high in carbs, lower in fat and protein. You can eat big giant salads. You can eat an entire melon if you want. You can eat 10 bananas. That's really going to depend on your appetite, and it's going to depend on your activity level. So I am not here to promote shoveling in lots and lots of food just to shovel in lots and lots of food. As you are on this lifestyle longer, as you eat cleaner and cleaner, your appetite is naturally going to regulate itself. So I don't recommend calorie restriction at all. I don't recommend calorie stuffing either. I recommend at the beginning aiming for 2,000 calories, give or take. And even I will link in the description to some places where you can calculate based on your BMI, your frame size, some other indicators about how many calories you need to eat in order to achieve and maintain your ideal weight based on your activity level, because all of these factors matter. And you can start eating roughly that amount and see how you do. Like I said, the magic is that over time your appetite is going to regulate itself. Your metabolism is going to regulate yourself. As long as you're not putting severe restrictions on yourself, as long as you're saying no to the ever alluring cleanse mentality, diet mentality, fast mentality, and you're just consistent with your body day to day, over time your appetite's going to regulate. Like I said, your metabolism's going to regulate. You're going to be as hungry as you need to be, eat as much as you need to eat, and your hunger and your satiety cues and all of that nonsense that might have been really screwed up based on a background of restriction, binging, overeating, any and all of that, it will all in time come into equilibrium and balance. So just sharing a bit of my experience with all of this. I shared this in my water fasting video, but I've done a lot of water fasting. I've done a lot of cleansing. I've done 30-day juice fast, up to 40 days water fast, unsupervised. I was a calorie restrictor for many, many years, starting at age like 13, going on diets, trying to get healthier and healthier, aka lose more weight as fast as possible, as much as possible. and these types of things. So I had a lot of metabolic damage and a lot of inconsistency in how much energy I had, my stress hormones, how much I was working out, what types of exercise, you name it. The imbalances, I've had a lot of them, many of them. So when I came into raw foods, started hearing about all the fruit, up your carbs, everything like that, I did initially, and I maintained, if not lost, any excess weight that I had. I started eating more calories than I had been. I had been cruising around about 1,200 calories, trying for that based on Dr. Furman's recommendations for weight loss, eating higher raw food, whole food, plant-based. So I upped it to around 1,600 calories, something like that. Was getting really good results, and I was active every day. I was riding my bike or running and or yoga every single day. I would say at least an hour of fitness, and I threw in some weight training as well. So I was doing a lot of like well-rounded fitness activity, eating a good bit, even doing raw till 4 on some days, but hovering around the 1,600 calorie mark, which to many is like, oh my God, that's too low. But I am 5'4". My ideal weight is around 110 to 115 pounds. That's when I look and feel my best. And I was around that weight point at that calorie intake with that much fitness. And the rest of my time I was fairly sedentary. I was in graduate school, so I was sitting a lot, I was studying a lot, I was in class a lot, writing papers. Some of my most active times was when I was teaching, because I'd actually get to stand up and move around. I love that a lot. But I was doing therapy with clients, I was doing assessments, so a lot of sitting down and a lot of computer and mental activity, not so much physical movement, being outside, which was very hard for me because I like to move a lot too. So cruised around like that for a while, changed my activity up a bit, just based on intuition. So I stopped doing so much hard cardio. The biking and the running fell away and slowly replaced with more and more yoga, 1 class a day, sometimes 2, and eating around, like I said, about 1,600 to 2,000 calories, feeling really good. And then started intermittent fasting, just naturally, because that's what was feeling good. That's also what I'd heard people in the raw food community talking about, that it was better to give your body time to rest and digest and process all of the experiences, foods, and toxicity from the day. So really alleviating the burden of digestion from the body and freeing up more space for greater mental, emotional, physical energy and healing. So I did that for a while. It was like a solid year to a year and a half, mostly raw, around that calorie point, changing my activity as needed, right at my ideal body weight, my ideal body composition. I could have had more muscle, but for me, I was feeling really good. I was very lean for me. I was light, I was fit, I was flexible, I was strong. Then I moved to Hawaii, and I was not, when you change your environment, it can be tricky to stay consistent with the things that were working for you. I'm sure many of you can relate to this. I've definitely struggled with this, right? Times of transition bring new stresses and new influences, and I found myself not eating quite enough raw food to sustain myself, and also being immersed in a culture of delicious cooked foods and delicious things that I had not had access to, and hanging out with a lot of different people who were doing things that were different than me, and being in a very open space where I wanted to try different things. So fell off the raw wagon, was eating more and more cooked food, and then, you know, started kind of gaining weight. I was not consistent with my fitness practices. There were many days where I wasn't doing any kind of intentional movement, but I was doing like active farm work or things like that, living a more outdoor lifestyle, but not doing my daily yoga practice, for example, or like weight training or daily running or anything like that. So I was inconsistent with my fitness. Started dialing that back in when, again, circumstances changed. I moved from where I was staying in Hawaii to a different place and was on my own more. So I became raw once again, started regular fitness activities, was feeling a lot better, but my mind was not in the most balanced, stable, grounded place, and that's when the allure of fasting really got me. And for the next year, really, I was stuck in a cycle of binge purge. I was stuck in a cycle of fast restriction and then binge aftermath. Fast restriction, binge aftermath. So dropping down or even below my ideal weight, being there, not being able to maintain because of the imbalances I was creating within myself, deficiencies, etc., and the unresolved emotional, mental, and spiritual issues I was not dealing with. You know, I was dealing with as much as I could with the tools I had, and I was cultivating actually a lot of strong tools, but I was not able to apply them in maybe a big enough, consistent enough, supported enough space for me to not use food as I was. So I was in that space for about a year, really stuck in the fast, binge, purge mindset, and then I started traveling in 2017. And that's when I just kind of like shit hit the fan, let it all go. And I was like, calorie free for all, as long as it's pretty much vegan, I am, good to go. I'm not placing any more restrictions on myself. So the pendulum swung from the 40-day fast to pretty much even eating eggs and yogurt for about 2 weeks or so. When I was in Southeast Asia, because I depleted my body, I depleted any sense of balance and grounding and consistency and trust I'd built with my body with that recurrent kind of abuse. And so I was kind of stuck there for a while. I'd say for a good over a year, I was in a space of eating like everything in sight, anything and everything in sight, mostly vegan, 99% vegan, but pretty much anything within that, and feeling like crap in my body, not consistent with fitness practices. Again, sometimes I was doing yoga consistently, but I was constantly traveling, my location was changing, my surroundings were changing, the people I was with were changing. I had no steady job, no steady anything. It was all air, it was all fluid, and I was using food as a way to ground myself. And also it was a necessary kind of relapse rebound thing from the abuse I had done. So it was actually quite healing in a way. I wouldn't want to necessarily relive it right now, but it culminated in me actually throwing out my back when I was living at Gampo Abbey, a Buddhist monastery in Nova Scotia, Cape Breton. Very beautiful, awesome space. When I was meditating a lot. We're talking up to 10 hours a day. It was awesome, deeply, deeply healing. I'll go into that in another video at some point. But I was doing a lot of the mental, emotional, and spiritual work in a very big, concerted, kind of all of my body, soul, and spirit invested in it. And at the expense of really taking care of my body. So I threw out my back. I was one of the leads in the kitchen, and it was a big contrast for me. I was carrying around a lot of extra weight, And like I said, was not moving as much as I needed to, was sitting most of the day, every single day, in the cold, in a very like stiff environment. And I threw out my back and immediately had the wake up call of like, now is the time to return to raw foods. Like, this is what you need. You now can do it in a way where it's not neurotic. You can do it in a way that is consistent. You can do it in a way that is healthy. It's going to take time to build back trust, but the trust will come back. This is what you know is right for you. This is always what you think back to and intuitively deep down know is right and works. So I went back to that in April of 2018, and it's been over a year since then where I've been 99% raw. There was another period of transition when I introduced some cooked food and went kind of like keto for a minute there. Raw vegan keto, and then it was like vegan keto, like I'm eating some cooked food too. But yeah, so being mindful of my calories up until like even going back into a bit of restriction, like I went into this like no overt fat space for several months, which then ended up in the keto space, right? So I know this about myself. I just can't handle the all or none thing. I need to be consistent with myself every day. If I am doing a period of no overt fats, like long term, we're talking 4, 5, 6 months, that tends to, at least right now, set me up for a binge where all I want is fat and I go overboard into almost a keto space. And then my calories, of course, because fat is 9 calories per gram, carbs and protein are only 4. When you're eating so much fat in large portions, your calories are going to go way up. If you're eating like the same amount of food, but it's more fat calories, you see what I mean? Like the same volume of carbs, same volume of fat, the fat is going to be way more calorie dense. So again, it was a necessary rebalancing for me. And coming out of that keto space, what happened was I was like, I'm not going to treat this raw vegan diet lifestyle as a diet anymore. I'm going to try this thing where I don't restrict my calories at all, which is something, I'd heard about online. I'd seen a lot of people posting about that kind of approach, and it really, really inspired me. I was like, why not? I've never really done it this way. So I did that, and that for several months, so from about December 2018, just to put some dates on time, the ever elusive construct we use, December 2018 till about when I went to Thailand to chef at Grant Campbell's retreat. So maybe 5 months, I was just eating as much as I wanted within low-fat raw. Fat just about every day. Sometimes, there was maybe a week I went a little overboard. So the next week I didn't have any overt fats. And then my body was like, no, it's time to reintroduce them. And I got back on to a little bit of fat every single day and was fine. And then intermittent fasting, I talked about this in a different video, just kind of organically came back into my life, not by force, not as like, oh, this is going to be a quick weight loss thing, just like based on my schedule and my appetite, this is what's working for me. So the past almost nearly 2 months now, maybe a month and a half, I've been intermittent fasting. My calories have come back down to that sweet spot of somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 calories a day with intermittent fasting. And I've seen my body change in a positive way, and I know it will continue to do so. So, no calorie stuffing, no calorie restriction. I especially encourage people who are coming from any kind of eating disorder background, overeating, binge eating, to use the Never Binge Again program. I will link to that in the description. And any other tools to create a food plan of your choice, if it's low fat, raw, vegan, for example, to go calorie unrestricted for a while and trust that over time with nourishing, I would also encourage you to get some blood work done, get some urinalysis done, see what kinds of nutrient, vitamin, mineral imbalances, deficiencies may or may not be present in your body. Use Western medicine, okay? Or, see someone just to get a sense of what your imbalances are. You probably already know them, but it can be very helpful to work with a professional. And, eat for a while. Don't fast, don't cleanse, don't restrict, just eat. Eat low fat, raw, 3 meals a day, no intermittent fasting, snacks if you want them, drinking lots of water, etc., etc. Do your thing for a while. And then, at least in my experience, over time, what naturally and intuitively I was guided to come back down to a calorie amount that was more appropriate for my body once I supplemented enough of different things, because I found out I was like B12, D, iodine, omega-3, a few other deficiencies, imbalances, high cortisol, and I corrected those imbalances. I also paid attention to other aspects of my lifestyle, which I talk about in other videos. And now I'm not using food in a harmful way. I'm not using it in a restrictive way. I'm also not using it in a numbing way, and the calories have balanced themselves out. So that's all I'm going to share with that. Please leave a comment, write about your experience with calories on a low-fat, raw, vegan lifestyle, or whatever thoughts may have been triggered by this video. Hopefully you weren't emotionally triggered by this video, but trigger is just the word that came up in my mind. Evoked. What kinds of thoughts did I evoke in you? Please leave those in the comments, and as always, like this video if you like it, subscribe for more, and take care of yourself. Much love to you. Namaste.